Corner for Evermore. This is kind of more talking about the fabrication and creative process that happens for everything else other than performance in Evermore. Have a team of amazing artists here that I'm going to turn over right now to let them introduce themselves and kind of a brief of what they do for Evermore. And we'll start with you.
Okay, here we go again. Again, my name is Logan Long. The topic of what we do is an interesting one because we all do everything.
Yeah.
We're a small, close-knit team of people. We all have our interests, but at the end of the day, we all have to participate in various projects, whether it be a mask, a prosthetic, a dragon puppet, a full-body suit. Many of these things you'll see if you're out there walking around the park. So I do my best to facilitate a lot of things, mostly the expenditure of money, allocating the right resources to the right job. If I have a good day, I'm sculpting or painting. Those are my passions. But again, we all do everything. And this is Troy with, what do you do, Troy?
So my title is shop foreman, but I do a lot of the puppetry and the animatronics and mechanized characters that are out there. Logan has had to do some of those as well because there's just such a burden of character. There's just so many that we need to do. So like Logan said, we all kind of share in the responsibilities as best as we can. We try to specialize a little bit, and if my specialty would be anything, it would just be the puppets in the shop.
Have you guys all been to the park? I didn't get it. I'm curious.
Who has been to the park? So you've seen our dragon puppets, you've seen some of our larger scale characters. Cool.
So I'm Rachel Bennett. I am the makeup department head. So I design all of the hair and makeup in the park. I do everything from leading the team, applying prosthetics, special effects makeup. I teach cast members how to apply. I design cast members' makeup and then teach them how to apply their own if they're more of a humanoid character. And I also help out in the shop. Like you said, we're an eclectic mix of artists, and we have a lot of skills, and I think that's our strong suit as a team.
Evermore, the mini hats.
Hi, I'm Warbear. I am the director of show design. I design a bunch of the sets and build them. I also jump into departments here and there and help with prop design and a little bit of writing from time to time. And I also taste test a lot of the food that goes out, make sure it's for all of you guys, and make myself safe in the process. And then
I'm Christy Carr. I work on the costume team. We work on design and creation, bringing that to life. And, yeah.
Hi, my name is Tim Gordy. I actually don't work for Evermore, but I volunteered to contribute a few pieces of artwork to help them in their cause and do some of their decorating, which are beautiful pieces too.
I'm Jeff Powell. I work in the armor and props department. We kind of fill a weird niche between costuming and props. If it's a prop that you wear, we do a lot of that. Leather work, ABS plastic, that kind of thing.
I'm Amy Needens, and I do the molding and casting and just assist anywhere that is needed.
I don't know if you have a last questions.
Yeah, I can ask questions. Make sure that'll be Lizzie. So the first question: what is your favorite project that you've worked on since being at Evermore? And feel free, anyone can chime in. You just kind of shake a hand. We'll try to avoid everyone answering every one of these questions because we'll get like 3 questions and then it's over.
Generally speaking, I haven't had a favorite project. I've had maybe a favorite design of a character go out, but I think my favorite part of doing what we do is the fact that we all do it together. It's really kind of fun to, you go from a design to a completed character, you end up handing the character off to various departments, and it's neat when you pass it off to somebody. Take a sculpture, say a mask. If I finish the sculpture, pass it off to molding and casting. The next time I see it, it's in silicone or foam latex. That's a cool step. And then I walk away, or molding and casting walks away, and they hand it off to the painting department. and then the next time it's seen, it's painted. So it's this series of little surprises until you get the final character all completed, leather, armor, props, and that's a fun moment for everybody. Does anybody else have a character?
In that same vein, the troll character that we made, like the bridge troll, was really fun because we all had a hand in it. We had like a big fat suit, a like mascot kind of suit that we were all able to build upon that involved sculpting the face and all kinds of things. And for my part, it was super fun because I got to just kind of dress him up with all kinds of things that I had laying around. And so that was a really fun process, seeing those stages go through, going from just a white fat suit to a giant, massive, troll walking around. And the frost giant as well. The same kind of deal with strapping things on and making it look ramshackle yet purposeful. So that was really fun.
As far as favorite projects, we've had several, and I think that's an open-ended question in the sense that every single project we get to work on becomes our favorite for that time. And then we get to jump on something else that's like, new thing to obsess over and create with. And then we all get to reach into our toolbox and put all those tools to work and then see something really, really amazing come out of it. And then my favorite part of it is not only feeling that myself, of going, oh my God, I now do this, and then seeing so many people really appreciate that and fall in love with all those projects. And that helps reinforce and cement that into my favorites category.
So there was a character early on in our list called the Junk Goblin. Nobody knew what it was. It was just supposed to be this puppeteered goblin guy. We didn't know how we'd handle it, and it was throwaway. I don't think Logan even wanted to do it. It's like, what is it, So I decided to take that on, and it ended up turning into something that I ended up being super proud of on the back end, just based on the reaction from primarily children, seeing children talk to the goblin and not the puppeteer that was hidden inside of, I don't know, if you've been to the park, if you've seen it, the pumpkins that he carries on the back. Anyway, for me, that was the most rewarding, just seeing that payoff. Because what we do starts becoming a job to a degree where our excitement comes on the back end from other people's excitement. Everybody asks us, don't you just have so much fun at your job? Yes, we do to a degree, but it's not to the same scale as somebody else that walking in and just seeing the final product, because there's many arduous tasks along the way, and by the time we get to that excitement, we've kind of burnt ourselves out. And so seeing children react was pretty awesome for me.
Speaking of the process, roughly about, give us a rundown of kind of what the process entails and about how long it takes to take a creature from ideation to launching it in park.
Well, that's one thing that we've had to evolve into a little bit, to be honest. We started with a small group. The group grew. We had to learn each other's propensities and skill sets. And until you know that, you can't really know how you're going to work together on an actual project. So we've been very free-form in how we've produced our characters over the course of the 3 years that we've been doing this. And we're getting better and better at streamlining an actual process, starting with an idea, going to concept, kind of in a committee state, talking about what we like, contributing ideas as a group, and then buying it off. That's the big word, buy off, because there's a lot of added things the temptation is to add to the character as it's being built, which just slows things down. So, I think the goal here is that we, as a group, all have a voice, and I think the characters are better for it. And in terms of how to build a character, it really depends on which character. Some require certain skills, others require different skills, and at the end of the day, each one's new. So building a new character each time is a prototype.
Anyone else want to add to that?
So one thing that you so Logan and I started at the beginning in 2017 in January, and the park didn't open until September of 2018. So long before there was a ground broken on the park, we had a list of 100 characters, the two of us and then 2 assistants. And so
we were also supposed to open that fall.
Yeah. So from concept to creation, we weren't going about it the normal pathway. We kind of had to just just take a character, attack it, and get through it as fast as we could and move on to the next thing. Some of the characters survived that, but some have fallen off by the wayside. But we've learned quite a bit about how we operate together and how the departments flow with one another. And like Logan said, I think we're better off for it now, having that time working together.
What's unique about Evermore is that it's not like TV and theater where you start with a script and the director says, this is what I want with this script, and then you go and you read it, you analyze it, you do your research. Since this is a ever-evolving story, of course, story team, if you were here last panel, they are building the foundation for these worlds. And of course, that gets our ideation juices running. But the great thing about Evermore is that we are contributing as well. We have an idea for a character, and then story takes that and evolves it in a way that it becomes its own living thing. And I think that's the most rewarding part for me is seeing these designs evolve and take on new meanings with the story.
I like that it goes the other way too, that sometimes we'll come up with like a little nugget of something and then like pass it off to you guys, and it's like, what do you think? And then you guys come back with like, oh my gosh, that's beyond what, it's amazing.
Sure, yeah. Going both ways on that is important. If we're going to take initiative and create a character, we only need a few key elements to inform the design. Where are they from? Will inform some of how they look and what are they wearing, what kind of socioeconomic status. While I'm sculpting, I'm thinking of where they're from. Just coming up with it on the fly. That's not concrete. I'll suggest it to the story team. They can run with it or not. We can work together and come up with the best story.
It's also to comment on those 100 characters that you guys designed before we kind of figured out what we were really doing with Evermore. It definitely helped on the narrative side of things for a story to be able to know, like, oh, we have this many of this thing, this many. So it's like, it's almost like having all your characters in your cast, like there, at least pictures of them or ideas of them, and that you can then start breathing life into and creating story for. And that was kind of fun, but then we realized, like, we can't keep doing that. And so this process, I absolutely love a lot more too. Anyone else want to add to that? Warbear? You have a kind of a different, again, all of our mini hats, it's all, I can see all of them processing, like, wait, which aspect should I talk about? Is it?
What was the question?
You know, I forgot.
I lost myself in all the answers.
Yeah.
About ideation for project.
Yeah, just your process.
Yes. As a person that wears many hats, I come from many different angles of the project. Mostly this one in particular, very outlandish. From a set design angle, it's seeing what world that which we create lives in. So again, on the opposite sides of the spectrum, it can come from, cool, that's that character, this is that story, this is where we're going, what does that world look like? Or another one of my favorite approaches is the absolute reverse, where like, here's what the world looks like, this is where they come, let's see what that world forges out, and then go with that creature. And then it's just a matter of going to Home Depot and buying a lot of wood. And then splinters and screw stabs and dead batteries until the job is done. And yeah, I think that's about it.
You'd actually be shocked with how much of our character build comes from Home Depot.
Yeah.
And funny enough, when you go to Home Depot and you're looking for a particular PVC joint, they'll ask, what are you doing with it? And you just have to say you wouldn't understand. Sorry.
Yeah. And I can extend this. This could be extended to Devin too. In your process of sculpting, Devin, like, kind of, what is the process that you go through? Do you go through an ideation phase before you go into it, or because I know some artists will just start sculpting, you know, and where some like to do the design and kind of build from that. What motivates and inspires you in your process?
When I get asked to do a sculpture, like I'm working on one for Brandon Sanderson right now, and I read the book that it's based on. I went through it 3 times, you know, and became a fan in the process. I didn't even know how awesome it was until I read the book. And so typically there's a small sketches I do, but not much, because the three-dimensional medium is so different from two-dimensional that you can make as many ideas as you want, but in the end, a sculpture is something that someone can walk all the way around. And as a sculptor, you've got to have, your goal is to try to make it look as good from as many different angles as you possibly can. And so, and I don't think you can do that on paper. You just have to get it going. And so typically I'll block it out, get it to a stage where I haven't put in an immense amount of detail yet, but the composition is there. And then you just start moving things around and try to get something that's exciting and dynamic and something that's engaging, and you just keep tweaking it. And then as you pile on detail, you invariably find that, you know, you didn't quite get it in the right pose, and then you have to tweak it and mess with it, destroy a bunch of your detail, and scrape it off, start over again. You just keep doing that over and over again until you finally get to a point where you're sick of messing with it and you call it done.
Yeah. There's a point where you're just like, okay, yeah, if I do more, I may cause actually it to fall into a far worse place.
Yeah, mirroring that, the previous things about ideation, the amount of creative freedom that we've always had has been fantastic. But I think we all consider the amount of world building that's been done, particularly recently, has just been a godsend, because for like my department, when I'm creating a piece of armor, if I know what kind of metals are available to that character, depending on what region they're in the particular world that they live on, that informs quite a lot of things that I'll be able to put in visually for storytelling for that character. If they have, you know, iron rivets as opposed to copper or something like that, just those kind of things really help inform every stage of the build as we go through.
Just to kind of build on that, I think having the world building that we've been doing recently and really in depth has been super helpful. We currently have our costume head is shopping in LA to get different textiles and fabrics and colors, and you know, when you can kind of plot out those things, it helps with cohesion, it helps with character read, that when people see it's like, okay, that's a knife, that huge mythos, right, come from certain areas, and as we flesh out stuff further down, that will be more
exactly. Yeah. And a lot of it too is because of what we had to work with, we just kind of figure out, like, world building and narrative wise, like how to make that work with what we have and what we've already established.
Yeah, from an idea and concept to building, it really has to be a communication, because sometimes a concept just goes way outside, for instance, human proportions. An idea, as cool as it looks on paper, is virtually impossible to do practically. So the conversation that we've been having is solid to these kids. Thank you.
When I came in as showrunner, I felt like everyone was kind of on their own island, and it baffled me a little bit of we have all these amazing artists who have all these amazing ideas. I can only imagine if we got all of us in the same room, kind of creating towards the same goal, like how crazy, you know, and how far could we push the boundaries of what we're doing.
I think we were all just really fixated for a long time and paddling as fast as we could to get the job done. You know, it's a startup, right? At the end of the day, this is a startup, but I think we're finally finding our traction.
Yeah, and we're pioneering into something that, you know, it hasn't been done on this scale, or even quite like the way we do it. All right. Amy, did you want to? Okay. Okay. What is Evermore to you? Ooh. That's a loaded question.
It's a fantasy playground, but it's also, for me, it's been a place to stretch and grow as an artist, to have an evolving story. This is an opportunity unlike any other in our field, at least for me as a makeup artist, where we are informing, we are evolving. For example, when I started on as makeup department head, it was during our lore season, and a story point in lore was that there were town citizens that were infected by something called the Dark Blood Plague. And this infection involved them spouting fungus and almost turning into fungus zombies. I hate the word zombies, but that's what it was. And so every night I was directing my team in how these characters were evolving, whether they were veining or growing more mushrooms, becoming more disgusting, spitting out black vomit, that kind of thing. So, fantasy playground. Yes. Oh.
Evermore for me is just somewhere where I was able to pursue my dream. Just because I've always wanted to work in a creative studio, work in a shop of some sort, but I got lucky enough that these guys gave me a shot to learn how to do everything that I'm now directing a part of the shop. So I don't honestly go much into the park just because I'm so much behind the scenes that I just love the building part. So yeah, Evermore is where I gotta live and grow.
Right on. I feel the same way as she does. As much as I love Evermore, my favorite part about Evermore is the lifestyle we have in the studio. Studio life is fun. We get to create all day long. Can't deny that that's fun.
And also, like, what I've heard even from guests that come in from other studios and workshops is that they kind of wish that they had that same level of creative freedom that we do, and that is constantly kind of evolving within this. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, it's great to have that long road, but we just have to not hang ourselves with it.
True.
Sometimes it's easy to get a little bit too loose with the plan, take too much time on things, so we just have to police ourselves on that. And I agree, yeah, we've had several people come through the shop, the likes of, Jim Henson, Creature Shop. I've heard envy from their side of things, saying that they wish that they could be as free as we are. Now, my counter to that is I wish we had the tools you do. We've also, just as an anecdote, we've had other really interesting people coming through the shop. We've had Richard Taylor from White Out come through, gave us some really encouraging and supportive commentary and some guidance. Anybody know who Richard Taylor is? White Out Workshop, yeah. So everything Lord of the Rings. And then we had Kanye for some reason.
Yeah. Let's not talk about Kanye.
On that next question.
Yes. Anyone else want to add to that? Or
I'll add to that.
Yeah.
Evermore for me has been a crazy, and likely always will be, a very crazy and stressful ride, but also probably the biggest opportunity I've ever had to explore my passions, all while feeding myself more than ramen and Red Bull. It has been the biggest in your face to my southern parents of you'll never do anything with your artwork, no matter what happens, and then here I am. It's been, again, a crazy ride going into the park and being somewhere as a huge nerd myself, going, wow, this is somewhere I've always wanted to be. And then putting my hat back on and then jumping back behind the scenes and trying to make it happen faster and better the next time. Yeah, that's what it's been for me.
Yeah, and every day that goes by, it's micro for some, but the changes definitely are being felt and seen, I think, overall.
Yeah, I think it's just such a unique place and location. I mean, where in Utah do you get to work on stuff like this? And all the time, I mean, the different creatures, worlds, it's just, yeah, kind of a creative playground and place to hone your skills, which has been great.
I gotta add to something that Josh said about his parents, southern parents, and judgments. I'm feeling reinvigorated by the fact that we get to do what we do, and it's we've been doing it for 3 years now, and I basically gave up a career as a pilot to shift gears into the art world, which was terrifying. I had to tell my fighter pilot dad that I was going to go be an artist, and it's working out so far.
What's that, Dad? Yeah, no, I'm still at Evermore. Yeah, I taught Kanye West archery today. What do you mean, who's Kanye West?
Where would you like to see yourself with Evermore a couple of years from now?
Personally, I would like to see that we're in more or less the same state, just better. Everything's an evolution. It's all money driven. The park, in my mind, had better be done by then. The studio could use an augmentation of tools, hardware, supplies. just to get us there. I mean, there's no way to get the job done without the right tools. You know, like I said, we shop at Home Depot, we get real scrappy. But it would be nice to have a more robust shop. Now, that said, if you came to the shop today, you might think it was well equipped. But you know, we've gotten to a point where we would like to evolve to the next step. You know, one other thing is we're all learning materials as we go. One big heartache I've had in the park with our characters is things fall apart. We're constantly battling entropy on both the scale of characters and the mortars falling off the walls. You know, all these things we're learning, we have to do better. Things need to be stronger. So I hope in a few years' time that we've got things really figured out so we don't have to constantly replace the parks that we're building.
Yeah, it's making that shift from, because a lot of us, this is something that hasn't been done. And so when you work on a film set or you work on a play, you only need the item or the asset to last as long as you're filming or the production is going. After that,
and in this frame.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you can just focus on very specific things where even what Devin was talking about of sculpture and that three-dimensional aspect of going around the thing. I mean, people are looking at our work from every angle, and we have to make sure that that holds up too. And we're pretty nitpicky too when it comes to it. Like we don't want damaged or bad work to go out into the park. It's a bad reflection of us.
Yeah, and you know, on the topic of comparing film to theater like this, you wouldn't believe, if you don't know, how many people are on the periphery of a shot with a really cool puppet in a sci-fi movie. There are 3 people over there with remote controls. There's 2 people inside manipulating the head. It's just something we can't do when we have an audience 365. So 360, it's not a year.
I don't know. I don't know anymore. Space, I don't know.
Years from now with Evermore, I'd obviously like to still be contributing a large helping hand towards it, and 2 parts. I'd like to see Evermore in a few years as a blend of Disney and Weta Workshop, providing a really, really amazing interactive experience for all of our fans, but also pushing out some really, really original quality content that's not just scraped from the barrel of sequels or rehash. But I'd also like to see our mango, cilantro, lime shrimp, and Mexican street corn return somewhere before a few years. That way I can keep eating that.
Summer maybe.
Yeah.
Coming back in.
Definitely.
Oh yeah. No, hi. Sorry. God bless you. That'll be for later this afternoon.
Let me just say that, like I mentioned earlier, starting from the beginning of Evermore and seeing how it, actually I started back when it was 2014 and they were trying to get it off the ground. But Evermore has been this evolving entity, both design and in the process of construction. So,
would you mind expanding on that a little bit? Because I mean, that's a good 4 years before we even brought actors and kind of story and stuff.
Was anybody around during the first iteration, the original, when they were debuting at Comic-Con and had this grandiose $40 billion idea of so the park was designed to kind of sustain itself as entertainment. The park was supposed to be completely interactive, where you walked around and the park itself kind of augmented to what you knock on a door and you do a special knock and maybe it'll unlock and you go, you're able to access this point. And there was this really elaborate idea that they were trying to chase and we were trying to make work at the beginning. Well, the park has kind of turned more into this, leaning heavily onto the live interactive theater experience that's a tough nut to crack. Like there's other companies around the country and around the world that are trying to make that work, and we've got that working now. But again, that was a far stretch from what we were trying to do at the beginning. So the construction was building buildings essentially that were empty spaces that were going to get all this augmentation later on, that now we're using as show spaces that we're trying to redress season after season. And we've started to get a handle on, and we're in the best position we've ever been, but that road from evolving creative idea while construction's being going was a rough one, to be honest. So for me, what I'd like to see in the future is as we've started to finally solidify what we're doing and it's working, that now the park supports that instead of us trying to support how the park was built. Does that make any sense? I don't know.
Basically, it's that cart and horse again. Yeah.
Or maybe years in the future, maybe not 3, but maybe beyond that, another park. You know, this is prototype 2. The park itself is a prototype. So if we can go bigger, better, take the lessons we've learned, implement things better, more interactivity, you know, from infrastructure, larger teams. Yeah, that would be nice too.
That'd be the dream right there.
I think building on what all 3 of these guys have said, I think in the next coming years, one thing that I would really like to see is having more of like a recognizable IP. You know, like Harry Potter World, you go to see it and you expect to see certain things there. Disneyland, you expect to see Mickey Mouse. I would love to see our characters develop to a point where people come to the park just to see a character or just to see a really cool, you know, prop, not just the environments, but the characters that we are creating.
I think one of the hurdles to that, Jeff, is that you go to somewhere like Disneyland and you expect to see Cinderella. You will see Cinderella, but it's not Kelly every time. It's a new actor every time. You know what I mean? So you have to have a staff of people who all look the same in order to fulfill that order over and over again, unless they're wearing a big foam head.
And the interaction with that princess is very limited.
Yeah.
It's mainly a photo op. Is kind of what they've turned most of their characters into. Okay, so that's, thank you guys so much. We've got about 9 minutes or so left before we wrap this up. So I want to turn it over to the audience immediately so that they can ask some questions while we've got this panel of amazing artists here. Thanks.
Quick question about footwear. How do you make sure your shoes are comfortable when you have to like design nice pointy things or all the above, really?
A lot of it has been, we have stuff in stock, but currently, and depending on time and budget constraints, we will usually have kind of a set of, this looks historically accurate enough, and provide kind of, if we have we do have some unique cases, and in those cases, we will find a way to kind of build covers. Like we have certain actors who have very unique shoe sizes, and we have to kind of accommodate for that. Also, we have actors that have different types of performance skills that they may need special shoes.
Yeah.
And then that's its own thing, that's its own budget to kind of look at.
Yeah, so some could be very acrobatic and will need more. But ultimately, yeah, most of our actors are standing about 6 to 7 hours during a performance and holding dialect for that amount of time as well.
Yeah, it's wear and tear.
Yeah, but yeah, Dr. Schultz.
I feel like that question is two-sided because we've got costume department, but there's also the actor side of it. Because, you know, as a guy that dips in many of those suits, I've got, here, this is what you're given. Cool, that's uncomfortable. So then you have to talk to actors. Bobby, maybe you can fill that one of, this is what I do. I go on eBay or Amazon, I order heat packs, Dr. Scholl's, and inserts and all kinds of crazy stuff to make it more comfortable for me being on my feet for so long in such amazing looking footwear.
And harsh temperatures too. Like that's another thing is like making sure we keep our actors warm, dry, all those things throughout. Because we don't have a roof on top of it anymore. It would have been a good idea. A dome of some sort that maybe you could project some lighting or something. Yeah, you.
Just talk a little bit about future plans when it comes to construction and just the near future, you know, what are those plans?
Without spoiling anything, right?
No,
Good luck.
What are we allowed to say?
Yeah, I'll stop you if we go too far, or if you go too far, so.
We do have our priorities. As far as timing, I can't say exactly, but we are desperate to get our chapel finished, to get the front fountain finished. Drakenhaven is one that's just almost there. If you know that building, it's the one with the Timpanogos backdrop, the Dragon Fantasy Cottage. That one will be cool. You know, another space to put our dragon trainers. And another thing is time is going to heal some of these wounds in terms of plant life. This is supposed to be a botanical garden at its base. So we planted plants, but now we need to give them the chance to thrive.
Which last spring looked really gorgeous.
It looks better every year.
Yeah.
No surprise. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Do you guys in your workflow, you have time to conceptualize and transfer locations across, or is it more in this materials and
It depends on if it's a physical concept on paper. Right. Ideally, that's the way to go. Ideally, we would have a whole series of meetings specifically devoted to individual characters, come up with a range of concepts as a group, pick the things we like, or maybe not as a group, we have an authority that picks what he or she likes. And that, again, is the ideal world. What we end up having is concept in the brain. Sometimes we're lucky enough to get a sketch. Sometimes we're lucky enough to sketch it ourselves, but really, we're almost there. We're just about there.
And it was the shifting of leadership that happened in the middle of a season. And so that happening in the middle of the season to all of us, we all kind of just hit the ground running just to give the best performance we could then. And now, moving forward, we'll keep buying ourselves. Like at first we were just happy to get a day ahead, and now then we got a week ahead. And then we fell back a couple of days, right? Yeah. I got it.
Let me just also to add to what Logan said, because Logan and I are both in the clay designers, so we'll get the clay and work it and design in the process of clay. But the most recent characters that I've done, I've had to do early sketches just because of proportionality. Like I did a frost giant character that was up on stilts, and then he had a halo that he wore that moves the head, and it was such a massive character. And I also I put him on crutches. I wanted so he could bear down on the ground if he started to fall. So I elongated the arms, and all that had to be drawn out and then mathematically designed based on the actor's proportions. But that's about as in-depth as we're ever really allowed to go because of necessity, really. And that's all.
Yeah, and then out in the back.
So when I'm older, I want to be cosmetologist, maybe focusing on customer sex. What kind of things do you suggest for that?
I think it's a question better answered by somebody with formal training. I'm more of a self-taught fellow myself.
So I'm actually a licensed cosmetologist, and it's just the networking. Just get to know as many people as possible, just making good impressions, even if you don't really know what you're doing. Just be very, very willing to learn, and just put yourself out there, and just always try new things. Practice at home, and just Stan Winston videos are great. Honestly, YouTube is a great place to just learn and practice. So that's
hopefully there'll be a master class that comes out at some point that's Greg Nicotiro's master class.
They're out there.
Yeah.
They are.
Well, where you not have to pay for them.
So I'm really lucky in that I got to get my bachelor's degree in design for theater, and there are some great theater programs out there, and I delved into film. But I think the biggest things that have taught me how to be a special effects makeup artist is just going out there and doing the thing. Find passionate people, find projects, do your research. Most of my skill set and knowledge I can trace back to specific projects that I worked on, whether they were student films or theater shows or projects that I conceived of myself that I just wanted to put out there.
I do want to say something.
Yep.
Okay. So do I. Well, so I ran my own shop for a while prior to all this, and what I kind of came to learn was you can spend a lot of money in college and then build your own shop, buy these materials that are prohibitively expensive, all while you're in the process of trying to get jobs to pay for those things. It doesn't really work like that. A lot of people find themselves going to schools and things and being more in debt. I think you'd be better off doing the research. There's YouTube. There's all kinds of relatively cheap avenues to explore, and then spending that money on materials that you can experiment with. Because there's so much, when you talk special effects, I think your mind would be blown at how much stuff you need just to do one type of effect. And it gets expensive. So.
True that. And also find out if you like it. You know, if you find out that you don't like it, you're gonna regret paying. I'm answering your question. You got another one? So you do some special effects makeup. Okay, cool. So you do know you like it. All right. Yeah. So then at that point, find these good avenues that are relatively affordable. On top of that, if you can find a mentor that knows what they're talking about, latch on to them.
Yeah. It definitely with art, it feels like mentor apprentice it seems to be a much better way to learn. An application always in the field of entertainment and all of this stuff. I feel you can sit in the classroom, you can absorb it, but it just doesn't quite really set in until you're in there doing it. And that's your best information. And on that note, thank you so much. If you'd like to still ask a question, we'll be lingering a little bit. Please feel free to come up and kind of look at some of the things we brought from our shop as well. And then this afternoon, we will be doing a Q&A in Bryce at 3 a.m. We will also be having characters in, I believe, the lobby over at the Provo Marriott. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day. Enjoy LTUE.